Congress is at a stalemate over funding of the Department of Homeland Security and the president's executive actions on immigration. And are Medicaid funds being used to pay for abortions? House Financial Services Committee member Congressman Shawn Duffy will explain. And later, we'll look at Pope Francis's Vatican reforms with former U.S. Ambassador to the Vatican, Ray Flynn, and his very personal effort to promote adult stem cell research. And finally, we'll bring you our exclusive look at the thought-provoking film The Giver with its star, Jeff Bridges. It's all straight ahead, the world over. Begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. The fastest hour on air is coming up. Congressman Shawn Duffy, Ambassador Ray Flynn, and our exclusive look at The Giver are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet at Raymond Arroyo. I'll be live tweeting throughout the show. Or drop us an email at worldover@EWTN.com. Let's get started. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. The situation for Christians in Syria is deteriorating quickly. The Islamic State militants seized several Assyrian towns this week. As many as 350 Christians have been kidnapped, according to reports, and militants have begun executing some of those taken hostage. Another 5,000 have fled. Syrian Catholic Archbishop Jacques Hindo confirmed to Fides News that the militants have taken full control of at least 3 towns along the strategic Khabur River in northeastern Syria. 40,000 or more Christians live in the region. Archbishop Hindo blames the current crisis on the West, in particular France and the United States. He called their policies towards Syria and ISIS disastrous, claiming that their irrelevant interventions have only helped jihadists and has destroyed Syria. Meanwhile, the jihadi threat is becoming global. In New York, 3 men were arrested Wednesday on charges of plotting to help the Islamic State wage war against the United States. Authorities say that one of the men first came to their attention last summer when the Brooklyn resident and citizen of Kazakhstan pledged support on a website sympathetic to ISIS. On it, he indicated willingness to assassinate President Barack Obama, to, quote, strike fear in the hearts of infidels. The second suspect was arrested at Kennedy Airport, allegedly on his way to join ISIS in Syria. The third, accused of helping fund the efforts, he was arrested in Florida. If convicted, each could face a maximum of 15 years in prison. Also on Wednesday, FBI Director James Comey said they're investigating the threat of possible ISIS sympathizers in all 50 U.S. states. He told a conference of the nation's attorneys general that the threat in the U.S. is indeed escalating as ISIS ramps up its online campaign.
ISIL in particular is putting out a siren song through their slick propaganda, through social media that goes like this. Troubled soul, come to the caliphate. Right? You will live a life of glory. These are the apocalyptic end times. You will find a life of meaning here fighting for our so-called caliphate. And if you can't come, kill somebody where you are.
And 3 East London schoolgirls who boarded a flight to Istanbul earlier this week are believed to be on their way to Syria to join the Islamic State's female-run police force. UK officials say the girls are among a growing trend of women who are interested in joining the terror group. In all, some 500 British nationals are believed to have been radicalized and en route to Syria. And Jihadi John, the British-accented militant seen in the beheading videos released by ISIS, has been identified according to multiple sources. The BBC, Washington Post, and 2 counter-terrorism groups in England are pegging the executioner as Mohammed Emwazi. According to the reports, the Kuwaiti native grew up in a well-to-do West London neighborhood and graduated in 2009 with a computer programming degree from the University of Westminster. Officials are not confirming or denying his identity, citing an ongoing terror investigation. And the British Parliament has rejected a bill that would have explicitly outlawed sex-selective abortions. Defeated by a vote of 292 to 201, the measure would have banned abortions performed solely based on the sex of the child. The government contends that existing law already prohibits such abortions. However, MP Fiona Bruce, who introduced the bill, said the current law is ambiguous and is being interpreted in different ways. Parliament did overwhelmingly vote to study the matter and determine whether such abortions are widespread. And the House of Lords on Tuesday approved the creation of babies using the DNA of 3 people, making Britain the first in the world to do so. The IVF technique swaps out the defective genes of a mother in order to avoid passing on degenerative diseases. The U.S.-based advocacy group, the Center for Genetics and Society, called the decision an historic mistake that would turn children into biological experiments and sell wildly exaggerated hope to women already in challenging positions. Scientists have warned the U.S. Food and Drug Administration that it could take decades to determine if the techniques are safe. And the Affordable Care Act is headed back to the U.S. Supreme Court. On Monday, the justices agreed to hear a case challenging whether federal subsidies can be given to people living in states where the federal government runs the health care exchanges. Such a subsidy is not stipulated anywhere in the 2010 law. The law only mentions tax credits for people living in states that run their own health care exchanges. The Obama administration claims that the law allows all consumers to receive tax credits. Both sides agree that without the subsidy, the financial scheme that funds the law would collapse. And according to multiple reports, the Vatican Office of the Synod intercepted the mail delivery of a book addressed to participating bishops in last October's Synod on the Family. The book, Remaining in the Truth of Christ, contains essays by 5 cardinals affirming Catholic teaching on marriage. It was published in response to the proposal by Cardinal Walter Casper. He believes that Catholics who divorce and remarried should be allowed to receive communion. Father Joseph Fessio, editor of Ignatius Press and the publisher of the American edition of the book, confirmed that dozens of those volumes were received by the Vatican City State, but never reached the prelates to whom they were addressed. Vatican journalist Edward Penton reports that the books were intercepted on the orders of Cardinal Lorenzo Baldisseri, the Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops. Pentin said the cardinal was furious about the book and said that it would, quote, interfere with the Synod, end quote. Back in the U.S., the GOP presidential hopefuls are assembling at this year's Conservative Political Action Conference meeting in Washington. New Jersey Governor and possible GOP presidential nominee Chris Christie was the first in a lineup to include Jeb Bush, Governor Scott Walker, Governor Bobby Jindal, Ben Carson, and others. Christie sat down for an interview with radio talk show host Laura Ingraham, in which he addressed his brusque reputation, his record as governor of New Jersey, and his stance on social issues, including abortion.
I'm pro-life. I ran as a pro-life candidate in 2009, unapologetically spoke at the pro-life rally on the steps of the State House, the first governor to ever speak at a pro-life rally on the steps of the State House in New Jersey, and vetoed Planned Parenthood funding 5 times out of the New Jersey budget.
Yeah. When asked about his infamous sit down and shut up response to a heckler, he drew rapturous applause when he replied, "Sometimes people need to be told to sit down and shut up." I kind of like that. Also, in the U.S., some early trouble for Hillary Clinton's likely presidential run. Ethical questions are being raised over contributions to the Clinton Global Initiative by foreign governments. The Washington Post reports that the Clinton Foundation accepted millions of dollars from 7 foreign governments during Clinton's tenure as U.S. Secretary of State. Algeria, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman among them. The Post also reported that a third of the nearly $2 billion raised by the foundation since 2001 has come from foreign sources. These donations would seem to circumvent a federal law banning such contributions. That law is designed to prevent foreign influence over U.S. political candidates and national leaders. The State Department and a Clinton spokesman have declined comment. And the controversial bondage S&M film 50 Shades of Grey has already spawned its first criminal copycat. A freshman at the University of Illinois has been arrested for allegedly sexually assaulting a young woman in an apparent reenactment of a scene from 50 Shades of Grey. According to the victim's testimony, 19-year-old Mohammed Hussein brought the woman to his dorm room, asked her to remove her clothing, bound her hands and feet, and began to strike her with a belt. The victim claims to have asked the assailant to stop several times during the assault. Hussein's attorney claims that he believed the act to be consensual. The young woman later escaped and reported the incident to police. Hussein's bail has been set at $500,000. When we return, government shutdowns, executive amnesty, and an ongoing persecution of Christians in the Middle East are the hot topics of the week. Congressman Shawn Duffy will unpack it all for us when The World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Funding for the Department of Homeland Security is in limbo. House Republicans want to strip out monies that would finance the president's executive actions on immigration. Now, Democrats want a clean bill, and the clock ticks as funding is set to expire. To talk about all of this and his recent discovery about Medicaid funding of abortion is member of the House Financial Services Committee, Congressman Shawn Duffy of Wisconsin's 7th District. Great to have you back.
Raymond, thanks for having me on.
Let's talk about ISIS. We have to start there. We have these reports, 350 Christian Syrians rounded up. Now they're threatening to kill them unless some conditions are met. How do we deal with this when the Kurds are saying in Iraq, we're outgunned?
Well, so first off, we have our Coptic Christians we know who are beheaded.
Yep.
We have individuals who are being burned. We hear rumors of folks being crucified.
Yeah.
I mean, these are barbarian, evil folks. And I think we need an administration that recognizes that and is willing to confront them and actually beat them. My concern, Raymond, is this, that the administration, by its lack of action, is giving Iran and ISIS both time. And they want time for different reasons, but Iran wants time to build a nuclear weapon,
right,
which is a huge problem for the region, but specifically Israel. And ISIS wants time to take more territory, recruit more jihadists, and raise more money. And the stronger they get, the more difficult it is going to be for us to defeat them. And the problem that we have in the House is the president doesn't have a strategy, doesn't have the will to address this evil. And our concern is that if we don't address it today, it doesn't get easier tomorrow or the day after. It only gets more difficult and more deadly.
But our policy seems muddle-headed here. I mean, in Syria, we are arming the rebels. In Iraq, we're arming the Iraqi government. Who is the Iraqi government now working with?
Well, we know the Iraqi government is now working with Iran. And so we have the tribal leaders in Anbar that rose up in the late 2000s and fought back against al-Qaeda and won. They're saying, send us arms so we can now fight ISIS. And they came here to Washington, D.C., and they asked the administration to send them arms directly. And the administration told them that those arms are going to go to the Iraqi government and they will send them out to Anbar province and to these leaders. And these folks are saying, listen, you know that's not going to happen because the Iranians will never allow that to happen. The bottom line is there's no strategy. And if anyone thinks that we're containing or beating ISIS, it's not true. We're losing.
Well, I'll say, this is the FBI director, James Comey, and he's speaking here about ISIS and its penetration of the homeland. Roll that.
I have homegrown violent extremist investigations in every single state. Right? Until a few weeks ago, there was 49 states. Alaska had none, which I couldn't quite figure out. But Alaska has now joined the group. So we have investigations of people in various stages of radicalizing in all 50 states. I tell my state and local partners, this is about all of us being connected tightly to each other. This isn't a New York phenomenon or a Washington phenomenon. This is all 50 states, and in ways that are very hard to see.
What do we do? These people are here. They're being radicalized in our midst.
And it's frightening. You know what? What I learned in this town, I'm a Wisconsin guy, but I learned here that people can have differences of opinions and they can have different strategies. And I may not agree with them, but I understand why they believe what they believe and why they're doing what they're doing. I don't understand the administration's policy, if you can even call it a policy. I don't understand their strategy. And that's what's so confusing for so many of us. We don't know what they're doing. And I have to believe that the strategy, if there is one, is to cut a deal with Iran and let Iran step in and take care of the Middle East. This is frightening, and that's why we can't get other governments in the region to step up and join us, because they don't trust us and they don't trust Iran.
Wow. Let's talk for a moment, because this all kind of dovetails, in my mind at least. The president signed a series of executive orders that would grant amnesty and green cards to dreamers, so-called dreamers, young people who have come here. Given this radicalization that we're seeing taking place among some factions in the United States, are you concerned that this is a national security issue, this question of granting a blanket amnesty for anybody who happens to be in country? And is that why the Republicans are trying to find some way to defund it as part of this Department of Homeland Security funding package?
Our concern isn't that we have radical dreamers. I mean, a lot of folks have come here, no fault of their own. Their families are here. This is the only country they've ever known. Yeah. We get why the president did it. We disagree with how he did it.
The executive order.
The executive order for the dreamers. But he expanded that now to parents of legal citizens as well. And the problem is he's not following the rule of law. And when you give some blanket amnesty to folks, one, I think you're giving them false promise, because it's not a rule change. It's not a change in the law. What it is just an executive order that's only good for a few years and can be overturned by the courts.
Right.
And so we're fighting a battle about our co-equal branches of government. And the president is acting like a king. He doesn't have the authority to do what he's done. And you got to go back in the history. We believe we need to treat those who've come here as immigrants fairly. We were working on a plan, a bipartisan plan, that would have secured our border, given internal security, and treated those fairly who have come here without documentation, whether they're able to stay as legal, in a legal status, but not citizens. What happened was all the kids, remember, from Central America came to our border. Yeah. That took us off track. One of our leaders lost their primary. That took us off track. And then we're in political season. We were going to come back after the elections and re-get immigration reform done. And instead of letting that happen, the president stepped in and did executive action. This is more about politics for him. He thinks that he's going to have the Latino-Hispanic vote for generations to come by doing this, instead of doing the right thing by him.
And the Republicans, in the president's estimation, are holding the Department of Homeland Security hostage by not funding the entire package. Here's what he said the other day.
Now, unfortunately, a number of Republican governors chose to sue. They found a district court judge who has enjoined, meaning stopped, us going forward with this program. But that's just the first part of the process. This is just one federal judge. We have appealed it very aggressively. We're going to be as aggressive as we can, because not only do we know that the law is on our side, but history is also on our side. And in the meantime, what we said to Republicans is, instead of trying to hold hostage funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which is so important for our national security, fund that, and let's get on with actually passing comprehensive immigration reform.
And the truth is, the president has said 22 times that he doesn't have the authority to do this executive action. In the courts in Texas, the federal judge has said this is unlawful and he can't do it. And so now we're looking at, how do we fund the Department of Homeland Security? Well, we want to fund all the agencies that protect our homeland, but we want to exclude the unlawful action. And the president and the Democrats are holding all the funding to protect and preserve our nation. They're holding it hostage.
Mitch McConnell in the Senate, your Republican majority leader, he signed on to this deal that would issue a clean bill. Do you support that? Where's the House?
So the reason that he tried to get 6 Democrats to, because listen, there's 54 Republicans in the House. They need 60 votes to get to the floor and debate the bill that we sent them, and none of the Democrats will vote to get them through cloture, which means to get to the floor to address our bill. So he was stuck sending us what is going to be a clean bill. right? Which funds everything. That's going to be very problematic in the House. We are meeting right now to decide how do we move forward. Do we do a short-term 2 or 3 week extension why the courts hear the case and why this executive action has been stayed? Right. Or do we say, listen, we're not going to fund it. We're going to send a bill back to the Senate that funds Homeland Security but doesn't fund the unlawful executive action? That's going to be decided tonight.
I want to talk for a moment about some of the things you've been discovering on your Financial Services Committee. This Operation Choke Point. Yeah. Tell me what this is. How this is using banking regulations, isn't it?
This is frightening stuff. So what's happened is you had a couple of activists, bureaucrats in the Department of Justice, and they don't like mid-prime, short-term lenders. They don't like guns, gun dealers. They don't like ammunition. So what they did is very cleverly, they partnered with bank regulators like the FDIC, and in that partnership, they put pressure on banks in America to stop doing business with these groups, these industries that they don't like. The problem is, these are lawful businesses. Right. They've done nothing wrong. And they've had no judge, no jury, no trial, no due process. And these businesses have gone out of business across America. And Raymond, oftentimes, they had no idea why their banks wouldn't do business with them anymore.
So what can Congress do? Well,
we're going to hold them to account. What you realize in my position is it is incredibly hard to fire bad actors in government, but we will embarrass them. We will put pressure on them. Raymond, the Operation Choke Point, this is just like the IRS targeting conservatives. This is an abuse of agencies that are being used for political purposes. This is like the old Soviet Union. This is like Venezuela. This is like Cuba. This is un-American stuff, and we're going to expose it. We're going to hold them to account, and we're going to push back on it.
What is this reputation risk business?
Well, what they'll do is they'll say, listen.
What does that mean?
Well, so they'll say to a bank, if you bank with this gun dealer, that's reputationally risky. Well, the bank board decides reputational risk, not regulators in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, but when a regulator tells you that,
they step away and they won't do it. And what's frightening is now you have your bureaucracy stepping in and deciding what businesses are appropriate and which ones are not. Just one other slight story here. They're going after smoke shops as well. Yeah. They're bending over backwards to let the drug dealers in Colorado bank, because it's a federal crime.
Sure, we got to protect that green industry.
They're able to bank in the banking system, but smoke shops are not. That's how insane these folks out here in Washington, D.C. are.
Crazy. Let's talk about what you've discovered vis-a-vis Medicaid charges and reimbursements. How Medicaid is actually unbundling the expenses of abortion. Where does this turn up? How did this come to light?
We're all aware of the Hyde Amendment. Federal funding can't be used for abortion.
Right. That's what I assumed was
that's what I did too.
Across the board.
Well, 10 years ago, an audit was done of California and New York and their family planning programs that send Medicaid dollars to abortion providers. And there was $3 million in New York and $17 million in California that was misappropriated for abortions. Nothing has been done in regard to audits since that audit that happened 10 years ago. Wow. So we've come back and said, listen, we need to have a whole and complete audit on how this Medicaid money is being used, and is it being used for abortions? We have a right to know. We have a right to cut it off. And we've got Chris Smith, as you know, as the chairman of our pro-life caucus on board, and other pro-lifers are going to get on board. And this is, again, taking a bite at the apple to make sure we're holding our government to account, and at least minimally our tax money is not going to fund abortion.
And when they say unbundling, what are they doing? They're breaking up the associated costs of abortion and filtering it through the Medicaid reimbursement program? Is that what's happening?
Yes, but what we're able to do is rebundle it and see how these Medicaid dollars are actually being used to fund abortion, and those audits will expose it. This is important stuff.
Congressman Shawn Duffy, thanks for being
here.
Thank you, Raymond. Up next, Pope Francis's efforts to reform the Vatican continue to make headlines. Here to give us his take on the Pope's vision for the Church, as well as his new advocacy for adult stem cell research, is former mayor of Boston and U.S. ambassador to the Vatican, Raymond Flynn. The World Over continues in a moment. Stay right there. Thanks.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Pope Francis is expected to shortly confirm new plans for financial oversight underway at the Vatican. It's all part of a complete overhaul of the Holy See. Here to discuss the Holy Father's latest efforts at reform, the ongoing persecution of Christians in the Middle East, as well as a very personal inspiration for becoming an advocate of adult stem cell research is former U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See under President Clinton and former Mayor of Boston, we should add, Raymond Flynn. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you again,
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Let's start with ISIS. There are reports 15 of those 350 Assyrian Christians rounded up. They've already been beheaded. They've been killed. They're looting and destroying priceless works of art, thousands of years old. Your thoughts on the menace of this group and how it can be stopped?
You know, it's just amazing to me that the political crisis that the world is in, and there's not a voice, there's not an entity that really can constructively deal with it. Everybody's pointing political fingers at each other and saying, you know, what are you going to do? It's like a big political debate. I talked to your friend, Mother Olga, just a little while ago, and I spoke to a bishop who's from that area. And he's telling me the consequences, what has actually happened. You know, I wasn't around during the Holocaust and Nazi occupation of Poland and Germany at that time. But I can't imagine that it would be anything different than what it is here today. No. And no one spoke out then.
Right.
And no one is speaking out now. You know, the Pope is speaking out. You know, there are moral leaders that are speaking out, Raymond. But they don't have the political power.
Right.
They don't have the resources in order to bring about a closure to this. And, you know, so ISIS and all these radical Islamic groups, they have a license, a carte blanche license to do just about whatever they want to do. And what do they say they wanted to do? They want a one-world religion, and they want to exterminate, and they want to chase every Christian out of the Middle East.
Yeah, even fellow Muslims, if they don't agree with them.
Yeah,
you know,
they're succeeding. And, you know, and it's, I never thought, I've been in politics, Raymond, over 40 years, 45 years, and I've seen them all. And I've seen Democrats and Republicans, but I've never seen a party, two parties, a political voice as weak as it is now. The UN has no authority. No. The United Nations has no authority. The international community has no strong voice. In the United States, tragically, all they do is point fingers at each other. In the Capitol, the White House, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. And as a result of that, we're seeing the world in crisis.
As a former diplomat, you represented the United States at the Holy See. The big story of the week, the Pope apparently emailed a legislator friend of his in Argentina, and his point was, look, we've got to stop this drug trade, these drug cartels. And he wrote in the email, hopefully we are in time to avoid Mexicanization. The idea that the drug trade of Mexico would find its way to Argentina. You can imagine now everybody, oh, it's not what he meant to say. What is the impact of something like this?
Did you say a friend of the Pope? Is that what you said?
Yeah, well,
that released it?
Maybe not any longer, but he was a friend when he emailed him.
No, I think, you know, you're going to get, it was a mistake, you know, releasing that information, obviously, and I don't think the Pope really meant anything by it in a negative way. But it goes to show you in this day and age, an instant 24/7 internet, that one little email can go all across the world and have economic as well as
cultural implications.
So I know Pope Francis wished that he never sent that email.
I'll bet.
And I think I understood what he was saying, but it didn't come out that way in the secular press.
Ray, we have seen this pattern really for the last 2 years since Pope Francis ascended the throne. And it is wonderful in one sense. I mean, I have friends of mine who never gave the Catholic Church a second glance, and yet they are riveted by the bluntness, the constant improvised statements, the warm expressions, and yet in between, you get these kind of PR disasters that crop up. Where do you think he's going? Why does this continue happening? Usually once the phone call is released or the letter is released, that's it. There's kind of a lockdown on this sort of thing.
Well, I think he's big news. He's good news. And I think people like to hear what he has to say. And it's refreshing in many respects because of the fact that he's speaking out on a number of issues. He's humanizing, he's personalizing the papacy, and it's not just an encyclical.
Yeah, but this isn't Ray making these statements. This is the pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church. There is the question, and I've heard this raised in recent days. People say, there's a level of imprudence here. Do you believe that there's something?
I don't think there's any imprudence. I think what it is, he has to be more cautious, or the people around him have to be a little bit more cautious. But, we all, with the internet now, I mean, I'd send out a press release when I was mayor of Boston, and the press would get it like 2 days later. Now I'm home at night and I see something on TV. Raymond Arroyo said that, and I start giving you an email, and you get it like 5 seconds later. So it's a different world, and he, of course, has to learn that. But on balance, if I have a choice of him being cautious and not getting his personality that is so important, that is so acceptable, so loving by so many, the world's most popular human being, I'll take this side rather than the side of caution.
Okay. There's a story we reported earlier. Cardinal Lorenzo Baldisseri, who is the General Secretary of that synod we saw in October. The story is that he used the Vatican Post Office to stop the distribution of this book, and the book is Reclaiming the Remaining in the Truth of Christ. This was written by 5 cardinals, and it was sent out to the body of cardinals that were there at the synod. Apparently, he obstructed the delivery of these books. Your thoughts on that, and where this might lead?
You write the book, and the book is there for everybody to see, and that's what you have to do. You have to keep that book out there, and everybody has access to it. I think the mistakes that are made too often is when you do something and you say something because of some political pressure or some media pressure, you turn around and you change your position, or you move away from that. Stay with it. I think people are looking for a voice that is consistent, that is truthful, that is refreshing, and I think Pope Francis is that voice in society today. And you know what? He's going to make mistakes. There's going to be misinterpretations of what he and his staff and the people around him have to say. But on balance, I think it's good. Look at why I just walked into the studio here, and there's a person that I know here from the media who doesn't agree with much of what the Catholic Church has to say. And he says to me, "Hey, Mayor Flynn, I love your Pope. He's doing a great job." Now, I mean, that's okay. That's what I want. I want people to love the Pope. I want people to respect the Catholic faith. And I want Catholics to come back home. And Catholics are coming home.
Before I get to this new mission that you really have taken on as your life's work, this Secretariat for the Economy, it's really D-Day for this economic reform at the Vatican, because the Pope has to approve the legislative framework of these reforms that are already in place. Cardinal George Pell is really the person who is being scrutinized here. Some cardinals in recent days have been saying, look, Pope Francis, you erected this Secretariat for the Economy and you appointed Cardinal Pell as the secretary, and he has been transparent and accounting and digging up audits and done incredible work. Turned up $1.5 billion the other day they didn't know they had. Now some are saying there should be another panel of 4 or 5 bishops overseeing him, in the word of one observer, to control the Australian. Your thought?
No, I don't think so. I think I like what he did. I thought releasing that information, it gave me an opportunity to talk about what the mission of the church should be. I don't know if you noticed it at all.
I did. I saw your piece.
But what I said was, $1.5 billion, that's great. Now, let's get the church back to doing some of the things that we love about the church. Educating our kids, schools closing in Boston, cities all across the United States. It's not going to be the panacea of financial problems, but it's a step in the right direction. Closing churches. People don't want to see that. So now we're talking about the good things that the Catholic Church represented, and I'm talking about, as a person who's trained in politics as well as hopefully a faithful Catholic, I like the discussion about the good things the Catholic Church do, rather than being on the defensive all the time, talking about what the Catholic Church should do.
What is your sense? You think Pope Francis is going to affirm Pell in this position and give him that autonomy that's led to all of these disclosures we've seen?
I think so, yeah. I think so. Pope Francis is close to the vest, playing it close to the vest, and I think he has a person from that Australian Cardinal George Pell, that he trusts and believes, and I think he's going to act in the best interest of the Church.
Tell me about your grandson, Braden. He was diagnosed several years ago with a very rare neurological disease.
Right.
And this really caused you to rethink your life's work and reorient it.
Well,
Tell
you know,
me how.
Raymond, we took him everywhere. First of all, the experience that I had meeting so many wonderful parents. They are really modern-day saints. I've met them in hospitals. I met them in clinics and rehabilitation centers. They would bring their children in there, little children, 8 years old, 6 years old, can't talk, can't walk, have some neurological, physical problems. And these parents were struggling and doing everything they possibly could. And I'd fill in and help my daughter as well. But it's amazing to me the unity and the courage that these parents have. They are something. Well, going to all these hospitals, including the National Institute of Health, we're coming up empty. There was no solution to
no cure for this.
No cure for this. And there's a lot of undiagnosed diseases that young people have. And quite frankly, Raymond, this country does a poor job in providing the research for these kind of diseases. There are a few people in Congress, Eddie Markey and a few of these people, that do a good job. But by and large, the Congress as an institution doesn't do a very good job. This brought me to the Vatican, believe it or not. And I was invited by the Pope to the world's first international conference on adult stem cell. And I talked to the world's leading scientists. And they told me about the future and the hope of adult stem cells. And I was amazed that the Catholic Church was in the forefront of this issue. That's the hope and promise, is stem cell nutrition, and that's why I became so actively involved in it.
This is adult stem cell, not the embryonic variety that there are moral difficulties
with. And I met a lot of wonderful people, this Christian Drapeau from StimTech. I met a lot of wonderful people that have generally given me a new purpose in life. If you know me as a politician, if you know me as an athlete, boy, you haven't seen me in terms of how determined I am to work with these parents to get the necessary medical research to help those kids.
It is amazing. I mean, I have friends of some means who have gone down, well, they've left the United States because this cellular therapy is available offshore. And now, it comes at a high price, but they take the cells from your own hand, they spin them, you come back, they re-inject them, and within days, I'm talking a 90-year-old man who was on death's door, couldn't move, frozen like this. The man is moving, he's limber, he's talking. He's been regenerated using his own stem cells.
That's exactly it.
Why aren't we doing more in this area, and why doesn't insurance cover the cellular therapy area?
That's the hope in the future. Right now we're dealing with stem cell nutrition. I take stem cell nutrition, and it has a big impact on my health. It regenerates different problems that I have, debilitating problems, or diabetes, or whatever it is. But the real solution down the road is medicine, and coming up with the research in order to provide some hope and opportunity, a solution, a medical solution for so many people. Raymond, you wouldn't believe the number of people that I see and talk to that correspond with me. I have everybody, I bet I have every special needs parent in the United States watching this program here tonight. We are starting to get organized, and we're going to be a political voice in America once again. My father was in the hospital with tuberculosis when he was a dock worker, and I saw injuries and I saw diseases. We made great progress. We can do more in the United States on these neurological problems, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, all these different things. We can make greater progress than we are today.
Well, those are great pictures of you and your grandson. We've been putting those up on the screen. So, we certainly salute you in your efforts, and we'll keep in touch. Let me know how things turn out.
I will indeed. Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you, Ray.
God bless.
You can find out more about Ray Flynn. You can also help him. And StemTech to find a cure not only for Braden, but for others suffering from these neurological disorders. Stemtech.com is where you can go. When we return, an encore of our look at the movie The Giver with Jeff Bridges and author Lois Lowry. Stay tuned. More straight ahead.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. The long-awaited film adaptation of Lois Lowry's classic dystopian novel, The Giver, is now out on DVD. Set in a futuristic, colorless society where citizens are medicated out of their passions in the name of sameness, a boy receives a special calling. Young Jonah is to be the receiver of memories for a society that has none. Here's an encore of my conversation with the author of The Giver, producer and founder of Walden Media, Michael Flaherty, and The Giver himself, Jeff Bridges. Take a look.
From great suffering came a solution. Communities.
Injected.
Serene, beautiful places where disorder became harmony.
Do you know how to fly those?
Absolutely. Do you get to fly to the edge? Oh, yeah. What's past there?
Don't know. We're not allowed to fly past that.
Let's go.
It's against the rules, Jonas.
They're called books.
Hello? My name...
I know who you are.
Who are you?
The Giver. When the elders need guidance, I provide wisdom using memories of the past. Our world was different. There was more.
More?
Much more.
I know what you loved about this project initially was you saw this as something for your great father, the legendary Lloyd Bridges.
Yes.
What kept you going after for all this time, 18 years, Jeff? What was the theme? What was it that drew you to this work?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you say that are my partners, Neil Koningsberg and Nikki Silver, who were with me, all the way through this, and we had lost the rights, we got them back. So having that camaraderie, somebody on the journey with me helped tremendously. And also the themes that the movie and the book are about. You know, this idea of kind of being addicted to comfort. You know, we all love to be comfortable, and the movie asks the questions. You know, what are you willing to pay for that comfort? What does comfort cost?
Are you concerned? And working on this film, were you concerned that we are reaching a point as a society where to construct a false equality, we're willing to give up rights or even dearly held beliefs and ideas?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's you know, one of the themes that is discussed in the film. One of the things I like about the movie and the book is that it's not really forcing messages down the audience's throat, but it's you know, provocative, and it hopefully will have people asking these questions after they see the movie. You know, what am I willing to do just to be comfortable, and what is that costing me? You know, and is there any value to the suffering that life has for all of us?
Jeff, where did you find this character? He's disoriented. He's weary. He's and I have to tell you, you surprised me in the choices you made for this role after reading the book. Where did he come from? Did you base him on something, someone you saw, encountered?
Well, my father. I know, as you pointed out, I really originally wanted to direct my father in the film. And I find that my father is with me on many of my performances, that he's part of it, and a lot of, particularly this character, but I think there are elements to all the characters I play. There's a bit of opening yourself to kind of be inhabited by this spirit, you know, almost to be possessed or whatever, you know, to invite this guy in, and that was part of it. And then also, you know, you're working with all of these experts in all these different fields. There's a guy who says, you know, what about this coat? What about these shoes? You know, look here, do you like the way this room is? And all of that adds up. It's a cumulative effect, you know.
In my reconnaissance and journalism, digging around, somebody told me you read this, Our Daily Bread devotional each day.
The Daily Word. The Daily Word, yeah.
And when you started filming...
Oh, yeah, wasn't that... It was
What
bizarre.
did you find in that Daily Word that day?
I think the word for the day was giver. Isn't that's like
Be the giver.
That's like the Twilight Zone. And it mentioned, how important it is for all of us to give and to receive. But the word for the day was giver. Quite remarkable.
Well, you were the giver and are.
Right.
Michael Flaherty, president of Walden Media and producer of The Giver. Why did it take so long, Michael, to bring this story to the screen? 10 million copies of this thing had already been sold when it premiered. What happened?
It's the lesson of Hollywood. There's only about 75 of these that are made a year. So it's almost like winning the lottery. And look, we're good friends. We talk about all this all the time. It's Ecclesiastes. For everything, there is a season. And I kept trying to will this into existence by my own industry and my own initiative. And God had other plans.
How long have you been involved in the production of this, really?
Yeah,
the pre-production?
14 years.
Oh, my gosh.
And the providential part of it all is every year we have 3 different groups of interns. And one of the projects we used to give them was, we want you to read the script, The Giver, and tell us, how you would make it into a movie. What are we doing wrong? We can't get it made. One of those interns was a junior at Tufts. Her name was Julie Rappaport. And several years after she graduated, I got a phone call from her, and she said, Mike, I'm in development at Weinstein now, and I could actually help get this made. And she set up a meeting with Dylan Sellers, their president. I spoke to Harvey, and of course, once you speak to Harvey, the next thing you know, you have Meryl Streep, Katie Holmes, Taylor Swift. So once again, God knew what he was up to and his perfect timing. Was this on your original list of... It was. Of things you wanted, projects you wanted to bring to the screen? Yes. St. Peter's Church in South Boston has a grammar school, St. Peter's. Yeah. My wife, Kelly, taught 5th grade there. Yeah. And that list was amazing. It was Charlotte's Web, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, Holes, Because of Winn-Dixie, Bridge to Terabithia. There's a line in the film, and it says, have faith that is beyond seeing. Yes. Tell me the component that faith plays in this story, in this particular film. It's central. It's absolutely everything. And that line is one of my favorite scripture verses. It's Hebrews 11:1. The substance of faith is a hope in the unseen. It's every movie we have. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Lucy, you're crazy. There is no Narnia. Charlotte's Web. Fern, you're crazy. The pigs can't talk. Everything we do is children believing in something and adults telling them that they're crazy. And here, what he realizes is that this was the way this totalitarian regime kept control over people, because they didn't want people to think that there was an authority that was higher than the government, and that there was an actual creator outside of the government, and he had endowed these people with free will. Yeah, no, there's that powerful line. They haven't eliminated murder. They just called it by a different... They brought it home, and they just call it by a different name. Because language, Orwell showed us this, Huxley showed us this. It is one of the greatest weapons in the totalitarian arsenal. If you can pervert the language and call something entirely different what it is, the people who practice infanticide are called nurturers in this world. And that's the other thing. And Shakespeare, as a classically trained actor, a rose is a rose is a rose. Language is so important, and you can call them nurturers, but they're still killers.
Lois Lowry, author of the novel, The Giver.
That my vision was to take a young person, to perceive the hypocrisy in the world, and to try to do something to change it and to forestall a hideous future. And then put myself in the mind of that young boy.
Fiona, we gotta go now. You, me, and Gabe.
Jonas, I can't. What about my family unit and the other new children? I can't leave them.
This is the only way. This is the only way to make everything okay.
I can't go.
When I get there, you'll understand. I'll come back for you.
Brenton Thwaites plays that young boy, Jonas. What did you think when you came across that moment where he recognizes this? They didn't do away with murder. They just called it by a different name.
I don't know. I think it's, it's uncovering the truth in that moment. Lois, in a great way, hides the truth, hides what's happening with suggestions of release.
Release to elsewhere.
Release to elsewhere. And, in that line, it basically uncovers the truth of this community and how evil they are.
I don't expect you to understand, but you must know that Jonas has become dangerous. He must be stopped. He must not get beyond the triangle of rocks. What do you want me to do? You know Jonas. I want you to find him. And then, I want you to lose him.
I know this story originated with your own father and his illness and losing those memories and how important memory is. Do you love the way that it's been depicted here and captured?
The memories that are depicted in the film, I think, were beautifully chosen. There's the one moment, which is a montage, I guess you would call it, of memories, which the giver is giving to the boy to give him strength. And it concludes with the young man standing in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square. I remember seeing that on television. I was in Paris at the time, and being just, it was very powerful. And to see it in this context was just as powerful once again.
There's a lot of imagery here that I didn't see the first time. I screened it in D.C. a few weeks ago and just saw it again last night. There's this tree of life that pops up all over the place. It's in the family dwelling. It's outside the window of the giver. There's this apple that the boy presents to Fiona. Why an apple, Lois?
In the original manuscript, it was a ball. They were throwing a ball back and forth, and suddenly he begins to see it change, and he grows to realize that he's seeing color. An editor pointed out to me, why would they be making balls? Why would they have dye or paint in this world of no color? So I said, aha, I have to change it to a natural object. And the thing that, of course, came to mind was an apple.
No Adam and Eve intention?
Not in my mind, but certainly a lot of theologians have found it there.
The Giver from Walden Media is available now on DVD and Blu-ray. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com. You can also sign up for my e-blast. I'll send you exclusive news you'll find nowhere else and links to the show segments. Next week, Catholic League President Bill Donahue is here. He'll join me to talk about his new book, The Catholic Advantage. We'll also talk finance with George Schwartz of Ave Maria Fund, and Rick Warren will join us as well. What a show. In the meantime, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. See you next time. Bye now.